Welcome to day 2 of the copper cycle lab. In day 2 of the lab, you're going to start out with your copper that has reacted with the 6 molar nitric acid. It's helpful to dilute this. So you're supposed to prepare 5 milliliters of deionized water. The deionized water can be found at your lab bench in the squirt bottle. And add that to your sample and swirl a little bit to make sure that it's nicely mixed. The next step is to slowly add your 4 milliliters of 6 molar sodium hydroxide. You're going to add it 1 milliliter at a time. You're going to use the same dropper that you used for your deionized water, and make sure that between chemicals you rinse your droppers. Since you're rinsing with water, you don't have to rinse before the sodium hydroxide gets used. But when you go from the sodium hydroxide to the sodium phosphate, make sure you clean your dropper first. Clean it with tap water or deionized water that you can fill into your beaker. We're going to try to avoid any contamination of the pipettes today. The pipettes are your droppers. In fact, you might even be able to avoid using a dropper for the sodium hydroxide step. Use the droppers that are in the reservoir beaker to add your 4 milliliters to your 10 milliliter graduated cylinder. And if any spills, I've got vinegar squirt bottles that you can use to neutralize the spills. Sodium hydroxide is a strong base and vinegar is a weak acid. By spraying the vinegar on the sodium hydroxide, it will neutralize it and make it easier to clean up. For this next step, you're going to be adding 1 milliliter at a time of your sodium hydroxide to your copper-II nitrate that is the aqueous blue solution in your beaker. So I gave you heating plates that also stir. So for this step, don't use the heat yet, but use the stir. If you turn this all the way up, the Teflon flea that you should have dropped in here will spin around so fast that your solution will come flying out. So turn it up to 1, so it just starts to spin around. If it slows down too much, you can turn it up a little bit. Mine's on 3 now. And I'm going to start adding by just pouring. There's no need to contaminate the dropper, which is also the pipette in this case, because we'll have to clean it later. So let's just pour. You'll notice that a precipitate forms. We want to keep stirring. Don't let the flea get bogged down, so keep it spinning. Now it looks like I've added 4 minus 2.5, so 1.5 mils so far. And this is where you're going to get the pH paper. Once you grab the pH paper, I want you to check the front of your lab bench, and you'll notice that there's a color chart there. We want to make sure that your solution, after adding the base, because you added nitric, it's going to be very acidic, and the color of your pH paper will move toward green. So as soon as it's green, you can stop adding the sodium hydroxide. This bright red color indicates that it's still very acidic. I've now added all 4 milliliters of my sodium hydroxide. And I'm going to wait to see if the precipitate goes away. After adding all 4 milliliters, my color is still red, and I turned my flea up to 5. Your stir might be much faster, but you don't want any splashing. So make sure you pick a nice slow speed. Since my color is still red, I'm still acidic, and I need to continue adding sodium hydroxide. I went and grabbed some more sodium hydroxide, which I'm going to try to add approximately 1 milliliter at a time by pouring. I've now added 5 milliliters of the 6 molar sodium hydroxide. The solution is staying consistently cloudy. I've turned my stirrer up to 6, and I'm going to do another pH test. All right. Less acidic now, but still acidic, not quite green yet. I've now added 6 milliliters of the sodium hydroxide, and the solution's becoming thicker. So I'm going to turn my stirrer up to 7 until I see that all of the precipitate in the solution has dissolved again. Maybe 6.5 would be better for the stir. Now, at 6 milliliters of the sodium hydroxide, I'm pretty close to neutral, and I don't want to go any further. So I'm going to move on to the next step. Waste not, want not. So when you're done with this graduated cylinder, bring it back to the sodium hydroxide and pour your unused volume back in. Make sure to record the volume of the 6 molar sodium hydroxide that you used. The next thing you need to do is clean this so you can use it for the next step. And that's why you need the vinegar bottles. There will be vinegar bottles by the sink and by the sodium hydroxide. 1 squirt, 2 squirts, that'll do it. And then rinse it with hot water, and you're ready to add the sodium phosphate. After spraying this graduated cylinder with the vinegar, you need to rinse it several times with tap water. And then come on over to the 0.3 molar sodium phosphate station and get your 10 milliliters of sodium phosphate. Again, the sodium phosphate's very basic, and so you should spray vinegar on your hands if they feel slippery, if you get any of the sodium hydroxide or sodium phosphate on your fingers. So now your beaker has the reaction between sodium hydroxide and your copper nitrate, and you've got your sodium phosphate, 10 milliliters, and I want you to take pictures of everything because you're going to make a poster of this, and slowly pour in the sodium phosphate while stirring with the flea. Observe any reactions or any changes to the solution. After stirring for about a minute, go ahead and turn your stir off. Grab one of the large magnets in the room. This is just a very large Teflon coated flea. And this will let you pull your flea out. Once your flea's out, you want to wipe it on your beaker and then take this to the sink to wash it off. All right, this is the culmination of step B, the copper nitrate and sodium phosphate. It was kind of tricky to get here, but we're here. And I've got filter paper. So make sure you name it, fold it, weigh it, filter all of this, and then keep that filter paper for tomorrow. We don't need to put it in the drying oven because we don't need to weigh what we've captured in the filter. So once you filter this, the filtrate, which is what passes through the filter and you catch on the other end, can go down the drain. And what you capture in the filter, what is filtered, has all of your copper ions in it. So make sure you get every bit of precipitate out of this beaker, and then you can start working on the chemical reaction that took place. All right, good luck. Tomorrow is day 2.